Welcome to Moonlight Mysteries, a calm space for long, research-rich mysteries. If you enjoy these sleepy deep dives, please like this video, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss new episodes. If you'd like to support the channel, a quick comment with your favorite moment helps more people find us. Now settle in, dim the lights, and let's begin. The Amber Room, Lost Jewels of Imperial Europe. Introduction. In the grand tapestry of European art and history, few creations have inspired as much awe and mystery as the Amber Room. This breathtaking chamber, crafted from innumerable panels of golden Baltic amber, backed with gold leaf and mirrors, once glowed from within the Catherine Palace near St. Petersburg. Empresses meditated in its warm glow, dignitaries marveled at its beauty, and for 2 centuries its splendor symbolized Imperial Russia's grandeur. During World War II, however, the Amber Room met a darker fate. Looted by Nazi forces and spirited away, it vanished amid the chaos of conflict. To this day, the disappearance of the Amber Room remains one of the art world's greatest unsolved mysteries, a story of artistry, war, loss, and reconstruction that spans 3 centuries. In this gentle narrative, we will journey through the full history of the Amber Room. Our exploration begins with the origins of the amber itself, fossilized resin that nature and time transformed into Baltic gold. We will then see how an ambitious Prussian king commissioned an entire room of amber in the early 1700s, a project so extravagant it was dubbed an 8th wonder. We will trace how this masterpiece became a diplomatic gift to Russia, was lovingly expanded at the Catherine Palace, and stood as a jewel of the Tsars. As war clouds gathered in the 20th century, the narrative we will recount how Nazis tore the Amber Room from its home and how it disappeared in the dying days of World War II. The many theories and attempts to find the lost treasure, from sunken ships to secret bunkers, add intrigue and tangents that history has woven around the Amber Room's fate. We'll also touch on the eerie legend of the Amber Room curse, which claims several lives connected to the room met untimely ends. Finally, this journey will conclude on a note of restoration and hope, describing how Russian artisans painstakingly rebuilt the Amber Room in the late 20th century, allowing visitors today to step into a glorious recreation of the long-lost original. Throughout this narrative, the tone remains calm and meditative, as if guiding you through a quiet museum hall or an evening documentary. With each section, we unveil not only facts, but also context, illuminating the cultural and historical background that shaped the Amber Room's story. Every detail is rooted in careful research, with the sources cited for historical authenticity. Now, let us begin our exploration with the very substance that made the Amber Room possible, the ancient and precious material known as Baltic amber. Amber, the gold of the Baltic. Long before it adorned palace walls, amber was treasured by humans for thousands of years. Baltic amber, the type used in the amber room, is fossilized tree resin from an ancient pine species that grew in northern Europe over 20 million years ago. As the resin oozed from prehistoric forests and hardened over millennia, it turned into translucent gems ranging from honey gold to deep orange in color. The Baltic region, especially the Samland-Sambia Peninsula near today's Kaliningrad, holds the world's largest deposits of this amber. Storms and waves would wash nuggets of amber onto the shores of the Baltic Sea, where they were collected eagerly, a practice that continues in some form even in modern times. Because of its warm glow and easy workability, amber became a highly valued commodity in antiquity. Archaeological evidence showed that as far back as the Neolithic period, around 3000 BCE, trade routes known as the Amber Roads carried Baltic amber southward across Europe. These routes stretched from the chilly Baltic coast down to the Mediterranean. Amber ornaments from Baltic sources have been found in Mycenaean Greece, Roman Italy, in the Middle East, confirming its role as a prehistoric luxury trade good. The ancient Romans were particularly enchanted. In the 1st century CE, Pliny the Elder noted that amber was formed from the liquid exuded by pine trees and describes its use as ornament despite calling it otherwise useless. Roman Emperor Nero so prized amber that he allegedly sent expeditions north to acquire large quantities, which he then used to decorate the Colosseum for gladiatorial games. In those games, amber was even embedded into nets as a talisman believed to protect spectators from harm. Legends and lore grew around amber's mystical qualities. To the ancient Greeks, amber's static electricity, it can attract dust when rubbed, seemed magical. In fact, the Greek word for amber, electron, gave rise to the modern term electricity. In Baltic mythology, a poignant story held that amber was the tears of a sea goddess, hardened into jewels when they fell into the ocean. This blend of myth, science, and beauty made amber as romantic as it was valuable. By the 17th and 18th centuries, Europe's ruling houses coveted amber as a symbol of status and wealth. Nowhere was this more true than in Prussia, a German kingdom along the Baltics. The Prussian crown strictly controlled amber extraction from its Baltic shores, considering amber a strategic national treasure. Prussian royals often exchanged gifts made of amber, such as ornate cabinets, mirrors, or jewelry, to secure alliances and demonstrate goodwill. Against this backdrop of amber's esteem, an audacious idea took shape at the Prussian court to create not just a trinket, but an entire room paneled in amber. It would be a showpiece like no other, an amber masterpiece that would dazzle all who saw it. Thus, the stage was set for the birth of the Amber Room, a fusion of natural wonder and Baroque artistry. Creation of the Amber Room in Prussia. The story of the Amber Room begins at the turn of the 18th century in the Kingdom of Prussia, under the rule of King Frederick I. In 1701, Frederick I, who had just crowned himself the first king of Prussia, commissioned a luxurious cabinet room decorated entirely with amber for his palace. The idea is often credited to his second wife, Queen Sophia Charlotte, an enlightened patroness of the arts who envisioned an opulent amber chamber to adorn their residence at Charlottenburg Palace in Berlin. This was an age when European monarchs vied to create lavish interiors, even among gilded halls and mirrored salons. A room made of fossilized resin was an exotic fantasy. To realize this dream, Frederick I turned to some of the finest artisans of the day. The room's concept and design were drafted by Andreas Schluter, a renowned German Baroque architect and sculptor. Schluter envisioned floor-to-ceiling amber panels in rich hues, framed by gilded wood carvings and inset with mirrors. Carrying out this intricate work fell to Gottfried Wolfram, a master craftsman from Denmark, who was celebrated for his amber and ivory carvings. In 1701, King Frederick IV of Denmark personally recommended Wolfram for the job, knowing his exceptional skill with amber. Wolfram set up workshop in the Baltic port city of Danzig, today Gdansk, Poland, where high-quality amber was readily available and where amber working had flourished for centuries. He was later joined by two amber masters from Danzig, Gottfried Thurau and Ernst Scott, who helped continue the work. Crafting large amber panels was a painstaking process. The craftsmen first built great wooden boards and lined them with thin sheets of bronze foil. This metal backing served two purposes. It provided a stable surface that would not warp with humidity, a lesson learned after amber pieces fell off cracking wood, and it subtly reflected light through the amber, enhancing its golden glow. Next, the amber itself had to be prepared. Workers sawed rough amber chunks into thin slices about 5 millimeters thick, and then cut and polished these pieces to fit together in a mosaic-like design. Because amber came in varied shades, from pale lemon yellow to deep cognac orange, the artisan arranged the slices in intricate patterns that accentuated color variations. When pressed onto the bronze foil with warm resin and beeswax glue, the pieces fused into what looked like solid amber walls. The joints and any gaps were cleverly hidden by applying decorative motifs carved from amber, such as floral garlands, scrolls, and crests. For added splendor, sculpted figures of cherubs and angels were carved from wood, then gilded in gold to be mounted amid the amber surfaces. Tall mirrored pilaster flat columns were planned to separate the amber panels, intended to multiply the room's radiance by reflection. The sheer scale of the project was unprecedented, essentially an entire room as a jewel box. Schulter's design called for 12 large wall panels of amber mosaic, each over 3.5 meters tall. Below them, a wainscot of amber ran around the room's lower portion, and above, an amber frieze with carved motif crowned the walls. The ceiling would not be amber. It was painted and gilded in typical Baroque fashion, but nearly 80% of the wall surface was covered in amber, an astonishing feat of decorative art. Work progressed slowly but steadily. Over 6 years, Wolfram's team managed to complete perhaps 1/4 of the panels in carvings. However, palace intrigue intervened. In 1707, Schluter, the project's architect, fell out of favor at the Prussian court and was dismissed. His replacement, an architect named Johann von Goethe, not to be confused with the famous writer Goethe, decided to take control of the Amber project. In a dispute over payment, Goethe fired Wolfram and abruptly seized all the amber material from Wolfram's workshop, even barring the craftsmen from entry. A disheartened Wolfram fled Prussia, eventually returning to Denmark, and Schluter himself left for other opportunities in Russia. Despite these disruptions, the idea of the Amber Room lived on. Goethe hired the local Danzig master Thurau and Scott to continue where Wolfram left off. By 1713, an inventory showed that a majority of the amber carvings and panels had been completed, enough to cover almost all the walls of the intended chamber. Fate took another turn in February 1713, when King Frederick I died, and his son, Frederick William I, ascended the throne. The new king did not share his father's passion for extravagance. Frederick William I was famously austere and practical. To him, the half-finished Amber Room was an expensive folly. One of his first acts was to halt the construction of the Amber Room. He ordered the remaining materials and panels packed up and stored in the Royal Armory in Berlin. Payments to the artisans stopped, effectively ending the project's first phase. Thus, by 1713, the Amber Room in Prussia had been started but not completed or installed. The glimmering amber panels, fruits of decades of labor, lay in crates, hidden from view. For a time it seemed this amber treasure might remain unused, but international politics soon gave the Amber Room a new destiny. In the years following the Great Northern War, which pitted a coalition including Prussia and Russia against Sweden, Frederick William I found an opportunity to both rid himself of an extravagance and curry favor with a powerful ally. The brilliant amber panels were about to become the most spectacular diplomatic gift in European history. A royal gift from Prussia to Russia. In October 1716, the imperial court of Prussia welcomed a distinguished guest, Tsar Peter the Great of Russia. Peter I was touring Europe and had come to Berlin to strengthen ties with Prussia. During this visit, Tsar Peter was shown the store amber panels and carvings. Accounts say he was utterly enchanted by what he saw, the rich glow and artistry of the amber decorations made a deep impression on the Russian monarch. Sensing an opportunity, King Frederick William I decided on a grand gesture of friendship. He presented the entire Amber Room installation to Peter the Great as a diplomatic gift on November 17, 1716. In exchange, the Prussian king reportedly received a troop of 40 exceptionally tall Russian soldiers, the coveted giant grenadier, as well as Peter's promise of support in their alliance. The gift was meant to seal a Russo-Prussian alliance against Sweden, reinforcing cooperation between the two powers. What had begun as a Prussian royal whim now became a symbol of peace and goodwill between nations. Packing up the Amber Room for transport was itself a considerable undertaking. Early the next year, in January 1717, the amber panels, frames, and figurines were carefully packed into crates for the long journey to St. Petersburg. Contemporary records differ on the exact number of crates. Some sources say 18 large boxes were needed, while others indicate 8 huge crates sufficed. In either case, the precious cargo traveled by road and sled from Berlin, passing through Königsberg and across the wintry landscape of East Prussia and Poland, arriving in Russia several months later. Remarkably, upon inspection in St. Petersburg, it was reported that there was practically no damage to the amber during transit. The Tsar's staff took this as a sign of the gift's fine craftsmanship and the care with which it was handled en route. Eagerly received, the Amber Room entered Russia as an eagerly received gift. Tsar Peter the Great, a westernizing ruler with a passion for grand projects, envisioned using the amber panels to enrich his own palaces. Initially, the panels were placed in Peter's Winter Palace in St. Petersburg around 1717. The Winter Palace was then a relatively modest royal residence, not yet the massive edifice it would become under later rulers. However, an immediate problem became apparent. The amber panels and design had been custom made for a specific room, and they did not fit any room in the Russian palaces without alteration. Some panels were unfinished, and the set did not neatly cover the dimensions of Peter's walls. Additionally, Russia at the time had no local artisans skilled enough in amber work to complete or adjust the design. For a while, the precious panels languished without a permanent home. Peter the Great, busy with wars and reforms, never got around to installing the Amber Room fully before his death in 1725. His wife Catherine I and grandson Peter II, who ruled briefly in the 1720s, also took no action regarding the amber panels. The amber treasure simply remained crated, or at best propped up for display in a casual manner at the imperial court. It wasn't until Peter's daughter, Empress Elizabeth Petrovna, came to power that the Amber Room found new life in Russia. Elizabeth, who became empress in 1741, was determined to complete and enjoy the Amber Room. Even before she seized the throne, Young Princess Elizabeth had admired the amber panels when they were stored in the summer palace. In 1730, as a princess, she ordered the large amber panels to be mounted temporarily in the old summer palace in St. Petersburg for display, where for 13 years they stood against the walls of various halls, admired as curiosities even in their incomplete state. After Elizabeth took the throne, her lavish Baroque tastes, much like her father Peter's, spurred her to finally finish the Amber Room as a glorious showpiece. In 1743, Elizabeth decided that the Amber Room should be installed in a grander setting, suitable for its beauty. She chose a chamber in the newly built Third Winter Palace, an expansion of the royal residence, and assigned capable experts to adapt the amber panels to this space. To oversee this complex task, Elizabeth appointed an Italian craftsman, Alexander Martelli, who served as a monument conservator for the court and had some knowledge of amber working. Martelli collaborated with Francesco Bartolomeo Rastrelli, the famous Italian-Russian architect, who was chief architect of the imperial court. Rastrelli is known for his opulent Baroque design, including the Winter Palace itself and the Catherine Palace. Together, Martelli and Rastrelli set out to make the Amber Room fit and flourish in a larger ceremonial hall. This required both creative redesign and technical innovation. One challenge Martelli's team faced was that several planned amber elements were still incomplete. Notably, only 4 of the 12 tall mirrored pilaster had been finished by the original makers. Martelli solved this by replacing the remaining amber pilasters with large mirrors and gilded wooden frames. While this preserved the intended reflective brilliance, it created another issue. Mirrors of the enormous size needed, over 3.5 meters high, could not be made by any Russian glasswork at the time. Elizabeth had to special order these colossal mirror plates from France, causing a delay of 3 years. The end of 17 oak frames finally arrived at the end of 1745. Martelli also made a substitution for the set of 4 decorative elements that had been part of the design in Prussia. Originally, Schluter's plan included 4 large Florentine mosaic panels depicting allegorical scenes, which were framed in amber and meant to be focal point on the walls. These were likely the same frames that later held paintings and then new mosaics. The details are a bit intricate. In the Winter Palace, Martelli decided to install oil paintings in those frames instead, since completing amber mosaics was beyond the local artisan's skill. He used works by Dutch painter Johan van Groot to fill the empty frames for the time being. Meanwhile, to address other gaps, Martelli commissioned an amber workshop in Königsberg, the Prussian city renowned for amber, to fabricate an extra amber window frame to match the room's design. even this seemingly small task had hiccups. The first attempt came in the wrong size and had to be redone, costing precious weeks. By late 1745, after overcoming multiple delays, the Amber Room was finally assembled and completed in the Winter Palace. Empress Elizabeth now had the dazzling chamber she had long desired, and she wasted no time in putting it to use. The amber-paneled room began serving as the setting for official receptions at the Winter Palace. It was said that candlelight in the Amber Room cast a honeyed glow on all within, creating an atmosphere of warmth and splendor that impressed courtiers and foreign envoys alike. Elizabeth's private enjoyment of the room is also noted. One account mentions she used it as a personal meditation chamber due to the amber's soothing glow. Yet, the Amber Room's journey was not over. In a few years, it would be moved yet again, this time to a palace outside the capital, where it would attain its largest and most famous form. The move was prompted by Elizabeth's grand architectural ambitions at a place called Tsarskoye Selo. Glory at Tsarskoye Selo. In the mid-18th century, Empress Elizabeth embarked on a massive project to expand and beautify the royal estate of Tsarskoye Selo, meaning Tsar's village, located about 24 kilometers south of St. Petersburg. Here, Elizabeth was constructing a majestic new Baroque residence, later known as the Catherine Palace, named in honor of her mother, Catherine I. By 1755, Elizabeth decided that the Amber Room, already a marvel in the Winter Palace, should be transferred to an even grander setting in this palace outside the city. She likely envisioned Tsarskoye Selo as the perfect showcase for the empire's most dazzling treasures, and none was more dazzling than the Amber Room. The hall designated for the Amber Room and the Catherine Palace was much larger than either the Charlottenburg Cabinet Room or the space in the Winter Palace. This new chamber was a square salon with a very high ceiling, nearly double the height of the original room in Berlin, and an entire wall lined with tall windows. In fact, the three opaque walls of this salon had a combined area of about 216 meters squared, roughly 3 times the wall space of the room for which the amber panels were originally designed. Adapting the amber installation to cover such a vast expanse required ingenuity and the artistic talents of Bartolomeo Rastrelli, who oversaw the remodeling. Rastrelli's solution was both clever and visually stunning. He aimed to create the illusion that the amber decoration filled the entire room, even though the original amber panels could only cover a fraction of the expanded walls. The 12 main amber panels from the Winter Palace were raised onto a stone plinth or base to give them more height on the wall, and an elaborate gilded cornice was constructed above them to define a break before the upper wall. Between each amber panel, Rastrelli added new mirrored pilasters 18 in total to span the now wider distances along the walls. These pilasters, with their reflective glass and gilded frames, not only filled space but multiplied the amber's shine. To address the great height of the room, Rastrelli did something quite imaginative. Above the cornice, occupying the upper portion of the walls up to the ceiling, he installed huge canvases painted to mimic amber. Court painter Ivan Bilski was commissioned to create a 30-meter-long canvas with a trompe amber mosaic pattern, colored to match the real amber below. This canvas, mounted around the top of the walls, was further embellished with real gilded wood ornaments, wreath, floral swag, bronze candle sconces, to integrate it with the rest of the decor. The effect was so convincing that from the floor it appeared as if amber work continued all the way to the lofty ceiling. In narrow gaps between the double pilasters, Rastrelli even had Bilski paint slender imitation amber strips so that no patch of plain wall was visible. Rastrelli also revisited the matter of the artwork within the amber frames. He decided to remove Martelli's interim oil paintings by Van Groot and replace them with something more befitting the room's magnificence. He commissioned Giuseppe Zoschi, a Florentine artist, to create 4 Florentine mosaic panels depicting the allegorical figures of the 5 senses: sight, hearing, touch, smell, and taste. These mosaics were crafted from colored stones, marble, and semi-precious gems, and once completed, they were mounted into the 4 large amber-framed niches of the amber room. The themes of the senses added a layer of artistic meaning, perhaps a nod to the sensual delight the room itself provided to those who beheld and touched it. The flooring of the room was not neglected either. Artisans assembled a sumptuous parquet floor using 15 different species of wood, arranged in circular patterns to complement the amber walls. The warm hues of the wood floor echoed the amber tones above, creating a harmonious palette throughout the chamber. By 1756, the redesign and expansion were essentially complete. The amber room, or Tsarskoye Selo, now occupied a large square hall and covered over 55 square meters of wall surface with amber, more than had ever been displayed before. In total, the room's amber ornamentation weighed about 6 tons. The chamber glowed in a kaleidoscope of amber's natural shade, from butterscotch and honey to sunset orange, all enriched by flickering candlelight and reflections in the gilded mirrors. Visitors were awestruck. Many described the room as a jewel box beyond price. And indeed, it was sometimes called the 8th wonder of the world for its unparalleled beauty. Modern analysts estimate that in material and artistry, the amber room's value in today's term could be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. One 2007 calculation put it at $142 million, and some later estimates go as high as $500 million, though truly it was unique and priceless. Empress Elizabeth was delighted. She began using the Amber Room for state functions and personal enjoyment. The room became one of the highlights of the Catherine Palace's famed Golden Enfilade, a sequence of gilded staterooms. Not only was it an aesthetic marvel, it also showcased a rare, successful collaboration between Western artisans and Russian ambition. Over the years, it gained additional touches. Elizabeth, wanting to fully furnish the room in amber, ordered the creation of amber tables, cabinets, and even an amber bureau to match the walls. She appointed Frederick Roggenbach, a noted amber craftsman from Königsberg, as the room's curator in 1758. Roggenbach set up a workshop at Tsarskoye Selo and brought in experienced amber workers from Prussia to train Russian apprentices. Under his direction, the team filled any remaining small gaps on the walls with amber mosaic strips and added a decorative amber over-door panel above the doorway that previously had wood. They also continuously polished and repaired the room as needed. Indeed, maintenance was an ongoing concern. Amber, while durable, is sensitive to environment. The Catherine Palace was not heated in winter when the court was absent, causing low temperatures, and in summer when the palace was occupied, the amber room could become quite warm from both weather and the heat of 550 candles illuminating it during evening events. These extreme fluctuations in temperature and humidity caused the amber panels to expand and contract. The original pine resin and wax glue could often soften or crack, leading some amber pieces to loosen or fall off over time. Contemporary reports noted that Roggenbach worked long hours and frequently had to reattach or replace fragments. The workers earned a modest 12 rubles a year, but the prestige of working on the Imperial Amber Room must have been its own reward. Thanks to their vigilance, the Amber Room remained mostly intact and glorious through the 18th century. By around 1770 to 1780, under the reign of Catherine the Great, who succeeded Elizabeth, the Amber Room was considered fully finished and stabilized. In total, its creation and enhancement had spanned 3 generations of monarchs in roughly 70 years, from the initial concept in 1701 to final touches by the 1770s. It stood as a testament to Baroque artistry and international collaboration. Catherine the Great held many receptions in the Amber Room, impressing foreign ambassadors with his luxuriant atmosphere. Later, in the 19th century, Tsar Alexander II, who was an amber enthusiast, reportedly used the Amber Room to display his personal collection of amber artifacts, effectively turning it into a trophy room of amber art. Minor restorations were done in 1833, 1865, and 1890 to keep the room in top condition. But its appearance changed little. The amber had aged to a deeper tone, but the room's luster remained mesmerizing. Through tumultuous eras, the amber room endured. It survived the Napoleonic Wars untouched. Napoleon never reached St. Petersburg. It even weathered the political upheavals of early 20th century Russia. After the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution, the Catherine Palace was turned into a public museum. Many imperial treasures were removed or sold during the Soviet regime's early years. But the Amber Room was deemed a cultural artifact too significant to disturb. The room was not regularly open to visitors, perhaps due to conservation concerns, but it remained intact through the 1920s and 1930s. Caretakers did what they could to maintain the amber panels with limited resources. In 1937, on the eve of World War II, the Soviet authorities actually marked the town of Tsarskoye Selo's bicentennial by renaming it Pushkin in honor of the poet Alexander Pushkin. Little could they know that within a few years, this quiet palace turned museum in its most famous room would be caught in the maw of war, leading to one of the greatest cultural losses of the century. World War II. On June 22, 1941, Nazi Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, a massive invasion of the Soviet Union. The surprise onslaught threw the USSR into crisis, and Soviet officials scrambled to protect invaluable cultural treasures from the advancing German armies. In Leningrad, formerly St. Petersburg, curators feverishly packed up paintings, antiques, and archives to be evacuated eastward from the front lines. The Catherine Palace, lying just outside Leningrad, was squarely in the path of the German Army Group North. Museum staff at Pushkin were acutely aware that the Amber Room was a prime target, not just for its monetary value, but also for propaganda. Nazi ideology claimed that the Amber Room was a German-made artwork that rightfully belonged in Germany. In fact, before the invasion, Nazi art experts had compiled lists of notable objects in the Soviet Union with German cultural origins, and the Amber Room was prominently listed in something called the Kummel Report, a catalog of items to be repatriated. As German forces raced towards Leningrad in the summer of 1941, the curators at the Catherine Palace made a desperate attempt to save the Amber Room. They initially tried to disassemble the amber panels for evacuation. However, after nearly 2 centuries, the amber had dried and become brittle. The glue holding pieces crumbled, and the amber began to crack as workers gingerly pried at the panels. Realizing that dismantling would likely destroy the panels, the curators halted the effort. With no time to devise an alternative, they resorted to a simple ruse. They covered the amber panels with thin wallpaper and draped the room with modest furnishings, hoping to conceal it in plain sight. The idea was that German soldiers might overlook the famed amber room if it appeared to be just an ordinary room. Unfortunately, this hope was in vain. The fame of the amber room preceded it. German art officers in the invading force knew exactly where it was. When the Wehrmacht entered the town of Pushkin in September 1941, they found the Catherine Palace largely abandoned, but not entirely emptied. The occupying troops soon discovered the amber room hidden behind the decoy wallpaper. Reports indicate that the covering was torn down by soldiers keen to behold the legend, and the glimmer of amber was revealed. The Nazi command immediately set about looting the amber room for transport to Germany. A special team of art experts and engineers was assigned to carefully take the room apart. With methodical precision, the Germans dismantled the amber room's panels, mirrors, and decorations in just 36 hours. Each component was packed into crates lined with soft materials. In total, 27 crates were required to contain the entire room's amber panels and carved fittings. By October 14, 1941, the crates had been loaded onto trucks or rail wagons bound for Germany. They were sent to Königsberg, the capital of East Prussia, which was part of the German Reich at that time. Ironically, the amber treasure was returning to the region where it first originated 200 years prior, but under circumstances far removed from a royal gift. When news of the amber room's seizure reached Germany, Nazi authorities celebrated as a significant reclamation. In Königsberg, present-day Kaliningrad, the art-loving Nazi official, Dr. Alfred Roth, took charge of the loot. Roth was the director of the Königsberg Castle Museum and an avid amber scholar. Under his supervision, the amber room was promptly reassembled in the Königsberg Castle Museum by November 1941. On November 13, 1941, a local newspaper in Königsberg even announced the public exhibition of the famous amber room, which must have bolstered wartime morale. For the next 2 years, the looted amber room was on display in the castle, and Roth researched its history and craftsmanship, likely planning a monograph on this crown jewel of amber artistry. Back in Russia, the war raged on. Leningrad endured a horrific siege by German forces from 1941 to early 1944, but never fell. The town of Pushkin, where the Catherine Palace stood, was occupied by the Germans for 28 months. Before retreating in 1944, the occupiers deliberately destroyed many of the palace's interiors, setting fires and smashing what they could. By the time Soviet troops recaptured the area in 1944, the Catherine Palace was a burned-out shell. A heartbreaking photograph taken after liberation shows the Amber Room's location, walls stripped to bare brick and strewn with debris, with only fragments of the painted frieze above the cornice clinging to the ruins. The Amber Room itself was long gone, spirited away to Königsberg. What remained was the ghost of a masterpiece in the charred bones of a palace. The Disappearance. For a time during World War II, the Amber Room seemed to be safely ensconced in Königsberg, albeit in enemy hands. However, as the war's tide turned against Nazi Germany, even this prized loot would slip from view. By late 1943, with Allied bombing intensifying and the Soviet army advancing from the east, Königsberg was no longer a secure haven. In September 1943, Alfred Rode received orders to dismantle the Amber Room yet again and pack it into crates for protection or possible evacuation, as British air raids on East Prussia became a threat. The amber panels were carefully taken down from the castle walls and stored in the castle's cellar for the time being. In the first months of 1944, heavy bombings indeed reached Königsberg. The Royal Air Force carried out a devastating raid in late August 1944 that gutted much of the historic city center. A significant portion of Königsberg's castle was reduced to ruins by the fires and explosions. It is unclear whether the Amber Room crates stored in the castle cellars survived this bombing. Communications were chaotic, yet at least some parts of the castle remained accessible after the raid, and Rode reportedly continued his duties as curator. By January 1945, with the Soviet Red Army closing in on East Prussia, the situation became dire. On January 21st, 1945, Hitler issued a directive that all looted art treasures in Königsberg of special importance be evacuated westward to keep them out of Soviet hands. This decree theoretically prioritized objects like the Amber Room for emergency transport. Reich Marshal Hermann Göring and others scrambled to secure trains and convoys for art shipments. However, in Königsberg, the command structure was disintegrating. The Gauleiter, the regional Nazi leader of East Prussia, Erich Koch, fled the city in a panic as Soviet forces drew near, effectively abandoning his post and leaving military general Otto Lascht in a hopeless defense position. Amid this collapse, organizing the Amber Room's evacuation proved extremely difficult. Dr. Rode, the castle's museum director, reportedly made a final attempt to send the Amber Room away. Surviving records suggest that on January 12, 1945, Rode wrote that the crate amber panels were ready to be shipped out of Königsberg, possibly to a castle or mine in Saxony in central Germany for safekeeping. The destination mentioned in his note was Welchelsburg near Rochlitz in Saxony. Whether the crates actually left Königsberg is one of the central mysteries of the Amber Room's fate. Some witnesses later claimed they saw the Amber Room crates loaded onto a ship named Wilhelm Gustloff in the harbor of Denia, Gotenhafen, in late January 1945. The Wilhelm Gustloff infamously was torpedoed and sunk by Soviet submarines on January 30th, 1945, in the Baltic Sea, resulting in a massive loss of life. If the Amber Room was indeed aboard, it might now lie at the bottom of the sea. However, these accounts are not confirmed and are just one of many theories. What is documented is that Königsberg fell to the Red Army in April 1945 after a brutal siege. Soviet shelling and assaults between April 6th and April 9th further demolished Königsberg Castle, which had already been badly damaged by earlier bombings. Fires raged through the structure as the city surrendered on April 9th. When Soviet investigators entered the castle ruins some weeks later, they found no trace of the Amber Room among the debris. They did, however, discover in one intact tower a few other looted items from the Catherine Palace, some furnitures. And later, in the rubble of the castle, they found fragments of the Florentine mosaic panels that had been part of the Amber Room's decoration. Specifically, pieces of 3 of Xochi's 5 senses mosaic were recovered, scorched, and broken. The implication was grim. It suggested that those mosaics, and presumably the crates containing them, had been caught in the flames and explosions that consumed the castle. Yet, intriguingly, one of the 4 mosaics was missing from these ruins. The panel representing touch and smell was not found at the site. That missing mosaic's fate would remain unknown until decades later. With the fall of Königsberg, the Amber Room vanished from recorded history. It was last definitively seen as crates in Königsberg's castle basement in late 1944 or early 1945. After that point, we have only speculation. Did the crates burn to ashes in the inferno? Were they evacuated in time, only to be hidden in some mine or bunker in Germany? Or could Soviet troops themselves have inadvertently destroyed or looted it during the chaotic battle? The Soviet government was determined to find out. Post-war pursuit. As soon as World War II ended in Europe, May 1945, the Soviet authorities made locating the Amber Room a top priority. The loss of such a culturally significant Russian treasure was a matter of national concern and pride. Immediately, teams of Soviet officials and experts scoured the ruins of Königsberg, which was now under Soviet control and would soon be renamed Kaliningrad. In these first investigations, aside from the burned mosaic fragments, little was found. These were rumors that perhaps some intact crates had been secretly recovered by Soviet military intelligence, but nothing was acknowledged publicly. Königsberg's remaining castle shell was cordoned off, and in 1968, perhaps to quell ongoing speculation or simply to clear war damage, Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev ordered the demolition of the castle ruins entirely. This act later fueled theories that the Soviets might have found something and wanted to keep others from digging. But officially, it was explained as removing a ruin to make way for development. The Kaliningrad House of Soviets was later built near that site. One person who was interrogated at length about the Amber Room was Erich Koch, the Nazi Gauleiter who had fled Königsberg. After the war, Koch was captured and eventually extradited to the Soviet Union. In the 1950s, he reportedly led Soviet officials on fruitless searches and gave no useful information about the Amber Room's whereabouts. Koch remained in prison until 1986, steadfastly claiming ignorance before he died. Another key figure, Alfred Rode, unfortunately could not be questioned. He and his wife had both died in early 1945 from typhus amid the final battles for Königsberg. Some have called their deaths suspicious, giving rise to talk of an Amber Room curse, which we will discuss shortly. In 1945 to 1946, Alexander Brusov, a Soviet art expert, headed an official investigation and filed a detailed report. After analyzing what evidence there was, Brusov concluded that the Amber Room had most likely been destroyed in April 1945 Königsberg's fire. He wrote that, summarizing all the facts, it appeared the Amber Room was destroyed between 9th and 11th April 1945, dates corresponding to the final battle of Königsberg. Brusov's team believed that the crates either perished in the bombardment or that any remains were subsequently lost in the wreckage. This became the official Soviet position for a time. However, because admitting this loss could reflect poorly on the Red Army's care or allowed the blame to fall on Soviet actions, Soviet authorities were not eager to publicize Brusov's conclusion. In fact, a few years later, Brusov publicly backtracked on his statement, likely under pressure, and hinted that the Amber Room might not have been destroyed after all. The Soviet government maintained that the Nazis were solely responsible for the treasure's fate and kept the mystery somewhat open-ended, possibly as a Cold War propaganda point. Despite Brusov's private conclusion, the Soviets did not close the case. In 1967, the Soviet government formed a special commission to search for the Amber Room. This commission painstakingly cataloged art repositories and holding across the USSR, and even liaised with East German authorities, hunting for any trace of the amber panels. They worked until 1984 without success. Over the decades, tantalizing rumors and tips emerged from time to time, keeping the mystery alive. One persistent theory was that the Germans had indeed managed before to spirit the Amber Room away from Königsberg before the city fell. Advocates of this theory pointed out that some eyewitnesses spoke of a train taking crates out of Königsberg in early 1945, or of trucks seen heading south. Perhaps the Amber Room was hidden in some underground bunker or mine in Germany or occupied Poland. Indeed, many Nazi officials were known to have stashed looted treasures in remote areas, salt mines in Bavaria for paintings, or tunnels in the Austrian Alps. Could the Amber Room be sealed in a forgotten salt mine or buried in a collapsed shaft somewhere? Over the years, various treasure hunters and investigative journalists have offered possible leads. In the late 1990s, a German team thought the Amber Room might be in a silver mine in the Ore Mountains on the German-Czech border, while a Lithuanian group speculated it was sunk in a lagoon near Kaliningrad. Both searches turned up nothing. In 1974, a former German soldier claimed he helped pack the Amber Room and said it had been loaded onto a ship. This revived the idea of the Baltic Sea being the hiding place. Aside from the Wilhelm Gustloff, another candidate ship named SS Karlsruhe was often mentioned. The Karlsruhe left Königsberg in April 1945, carrying civilians and possibly cargo from the museum. It was sunk by Soviet aircraft just off the coast of Poland. In an intriguing modern development, Polish divers located the wreck of the Karlsruhe in 2020, astonishingly intact with many crates in its hold. This raised the hopes anew. Could those untouched crates contain the Amber Room? But after careful examination in 2021, the divers reported that the crates they opened held only military equipment and personal effects of evacuees, not amber panels. The Amber Room was not on that ship. In the early 1980s, it was rumored the Amber Room could be hidden somewhere in former East Germany. One often cited location was a network of underground tunnels in Thuringia, or a cellar beneath a palace in the Saxon countryside. In 2017, a Polish mining group even claimed they had found a sealed chamber in an old Nazi bunker in the village of Mamerki, Poland, that possibly contained crates of the Amber Room. Excavation at Mamerki did reveal a hidden narrow gauge railway and wagons in 2023, sparking excitement. However, digging thus far has uncovered only World War II debris, like swastika-marked plates and personal items, and nothing conclusive of the Amber Room. The search in Mamerki continues cautiously due to the protected forest in the area. Another famous but ultimately debunked story was the so-called Nazi gold train in Poland's Owl Mountain around 2015. Two treasure hunters claimed to have found evidence of a hidden train loaded with gold and possibly the Amber Room. Extensive drilling and radar scanning were done, but nothing was found in the hillside tunnel. It appears this was a modern legend fueled by wishful thinking. A different angle is the Stalin conspiracy theory. Some have wildly suggested that perhaps the Amber Room the Nazis stole was not the real one at all. According to this theory, Stalin had a replica made in advance and secretly hid the original, so the Germans only took a decoy. There's no credible evidence for this scenario, but it adds one more layer of intrigue. It's seen as far-fetched by historians. The resources and time to fabricate a fake Amber Room in the 1930s would have been enormous and impossible to hide. Nonetheless, the mere existence of such a theory shows how the Amber Room's fate has invited imaginative speculation. Amid all these hunts and hypotheses, only one physical piece of the original Amber Room has ever been recovered in confirmed condition. In 1997, German art investigator in Bremen, Germany, got word that someone was trying to sell a strange mosaic panel on the black market. They raided the intermediary's office and seized the object. It turned out to be the missing Florentine mosaic of touch and smell from the Amber Room intact. The panel was in the possession of the family of a deceased German soldier. The soldier's son claimed he had no idea it was part of the Amber Room. Apparently, it had hung in his family home for decades as just an artwork. How this mosaic became separated from the rest of the room remains a mystery. Perhaps it was pilfered early by someone and never made it into the main crates, or it was removed from the crates as a keepsake. Regardless, the recovery of this mosaic was significant. It was handed over to Russian authorities and later used by restorers as a reference piece during the reconstruction of the Amber Room. The find proved that at least some of the Amber Room's treasure survived the war, giving a glimmer of hope that more might still surface. But to date, no other substantial element, no large amber panel or carving has ever been found. The enduring mystery of the Amber Room has often been likened to a real-life treasure hunt thriller. It has spawned numerous books, documentaries, and investigations by journalists and enthusiasts worldwide. In 2004, two investigative reporters, Catherine Scott Clark and Adrian Levy, published an extensive study concluding that the Amber Room was likely destroyed in Königsberg in 1945, and that subsequent Soviet searches were more about political motives than genuine leads. They argued that Soviet authorities might have wanted to ensure Soviet soldiers were not blamed, and also found the Amber Room useful as a Cold War propaganda tool, implying Western culpability for its loss. Russian officials and many historians, however, dispute these conclusions and maintain that the final fate is not proven one way or the other. A decade passed. The lack of definitive answers imbued the Amber Room with a kind of mythic status, akin to the Ark of the Covenant or Atlantis of art history. This aura was further enhanced by tales of a supposed curse connected to the Amber Room. Over the years, people noted that several individuals linked to the Amber Room's removal or search met untimely or eerie deaths. As mentioned, Alfred Rode and his wife died in Königsberg in 1945 from typhus. Some whisper that their deaths conveniently prevented them from divulging what they knew about the Amber Room's final disposition to Soviet interrogators. In the 1970s, a Soviet intelligence officer, General Gusev, who had been investigating leads about the Amber Room, died in a car crash shortly after speaking with a journalist on the subject. Perhaps the most dramatic story is that of George Stein, a former German soldier who became obsessed with finding the Amber Room. In the 1980s, Stein claimed to be closing in on the treasure, but in 1987, he was found murdered in a Bavarian forest under mysterious circumstances. His death sparked conspiracy theories. Was he silenced by someone? Or did he fall victim to criminals after his presumed knowledge? These incidents, while likely coincidental or explainable by ordinary causes, have been woven into the legend of an Amber Room curse. The idea of a curse suggests that the treasure exacts a price on those who seek or touch it. It's the stuff of lore often associated with lost treasures. Similar tales exist about Tutankhamun's tomb, for example. Most historians are skeptical of any literal curse, noting that war and clandestine activities naturally involve danger. As one commentator dryly put it, typhoid fever is not mysterious, and a car wreck, sadly, is common. Nonetheless, these macabre footnotes add an extra fizzen to the Amber Room saga, making it all the more compelling in the public imagination. Ultimately, despite exhaustive efforts, the original Amber Room has never been recovered. The official stance of the Russian authority today is that the room was likely destroyed in 1945, but they remain open to credible information should it ever surface. Many art recovery experts agree that if the amber panels had somehow survived hidden. They would likely be severely degraded now. Amber can darken and even crumble if not kept in stable conditions. After 80 years, the chance of finding the amber room intact grows slimmer. Yet hope lingers. In every few years, a new clue or expedition hits headlines, proving that the world has not forgotten this lost wonder. Rebirth, Reconstructing the Amber Room. Even as the mystery of the missing amber room persisted, the Soviet Union and later Russia decided that this cultural gem deserved to be resurrected, if not by discovery, then by painstaking reconstruction. In 1979, the Soviet government, under Leonid Brezhnev, made a momentous announcement. Craftsmen would recreate the Amber Room and install it once again in the Catherine Palace at Tsarskoye Selo. This ambitious project would take 24 years of dedication and skill, eventually culminating in a triumph of restoration by 2003. Rebuilding the Amber Room was a formidable challenge. Essentially, the task was to duplicate an 18th century masterpiece from scratch, using only photographs, a few salvaged remnants, and descriptions, since the original was gone. At first, very little documentation was thought to exist. However, as the team convened, they gathered vital reference materials. The Soviet archives had 86 black and white photographs of the Amber Room, taken in 1937 to 1938, for a planned pre-war restoration. These images show the room's panels and decor in detail, albeit without color. Amazingly, there was also one color photograph from 1937 of a corner of the Amber Room. Color photography was rare then, but this slide proved invaluable for understanding the true hues and tonal variation of the amber on the walls. It depicted the southwest corner, capturing two of the mosaic panels, their amber frames, several pilasters, and the gilded ornaments. From the ruins of the palace, 76 small fragments of amber from the original room had been retrieved after the war. These fragments, pieces of carving and wall mosaic chips, gave clues to the amber's thickness, colors, and the adhesive used. In storage at Tsarskoye Selo, curators found a miniature amber chest that dated to the time of the Amber Room's creation. It was in poor condition, but during its restoration, they discovered it bore the signature of Godfrey Thurau, one of the original amber craftsmen. Studying this chest provided insights into 18th century amber working techniques, like how pieces were joined and what finishing was applied. Perhaps the most helpful, the last surviving curator of the Amber Room, Anatoly Kochunimov, who had been in charge of it from 1933 up to 1941, was still alive in the 1980s. He had first-hand memories of the room and contributed guidance in the planning of the reconstruction. With these resources, a research committee led by experts like Alexander Krylov and Alexander Zuravalov was formed 2 years before actual work commenced. They analyzed old techniques and even consulted forensic labs to decipher the composition of the amber glue from residue on fragments. It turns out the best adhesive was the traditional one, a mixture of beeswax and pine resin, just as the original craftsmen used. By finding a formula that melts at about 60 degrees Celsius, restorers with simple tools and adjust amber pieces with simple tools like hair dryers, allowing reversibility for repairs. This was important for the long-term conservation of the new room. An enormous hurdle was obtaining enough high-quality amber. The reconstruction team calculated they would need about 6,000 kilograms, or 6 metric tons, of top-grade amber to recreate all the panels and ornamentation. That amounts to literally millions of amber pieces. Fortunately, the primary source, the amber mines in the Kaliningrad region, were under state control. The Soviet government granted access to these mines, which even in the late 20th century were yielding plenty of amber. The region produces several hundreds of tons of amber per year. Thus, raw material was supplied directly and relatively inexpensively as a state resource in the 1980s. The actual reconstruction work began in 1982 when a special amber workshop called Tsarskoye Selo Amber Workshop was established. It was headed by master craftsman Boris Igdalov, with a team including talented artisans such as Marina Trutanova and others, many of them graduates of the Mukina Art Academy in Leningrad. These artisans had to relearn the lost art of large-scale amber carving and mosaic. In the early years, progress was slow and methodical. They studied the photographs and fragments to understand the puzzle of patterns in each panel. Using the historic images as a map, they traced out the designs. Every fragment of the old photos was scrutinized to deduce how the original amber pieces were cut and placed in swirling Rococo motifs. One interesting adaptation: not all amber needed to be natural shaped. Some smaller elements and background sections were recreated using pressed amber, a modern technique where small amber chips are heat pressed into larger sheets. About 4.2 square meters of the new amber room's walls paneling was made using pressed amber, especially for parts that require uniform color or filler pieces. However, for the showcase surfaces and decorative sculptures, the team used solid amber pieces, carefully sorted by shade. They even went as far as replicating the original's 350 shades of amber as recorded in documents. To achieve this, They sometimes gently heat-treated or oiled amber to deepen its color, or conversely bleached it in sunlight for paler tones. Each piece was pre-fit on large wooden panels without glue, numbered, then individually glued once the pattern was perfect. They used modern tools where helpful, but many processes were done by hand in the old-fashioned, scraping, sanding, and polishing by feel and eye. For the carved ornamental pieces, like scrolls, flowers, cherubs, a combination of techniques was used. Some had to be hand-carved from amber blocks, others cast from amber powder, and many gilded wood elements had to be recreated as well. The team consulted any surviving drawings and similar Baroque carvings to reproduce these details. Thankfully, the photographs from the 1930s provided a clear reference for shapes. Financial hurdles emerged in the 1990s. After the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, government funding for the project became uncertain. Inflation, all the work, economic hardship in Russia, stalled the work by the mid-1990s. At one point, by 1994, the workshop's highly skilled amber artists were not being paid regularly. With about half the reconstruction done, it looked as if the amber room might remain unfinished yet again due to lack of money. But in 1999, a savior appeared in the form of a major German corporate sponsor. The German energy company Ruhrgas AG, now part of E.ON, offered a donation of around $3.5 million to help complete the project. This act had beautiful symmetry, a German contribution aiding the restoration of what had been originally a Prussian gift to Russia. Ruhrgas's chairman noted that the amber held enormous emotional significance for both Germany and Russia and symbolized a time of close relations between the two nations. Indeed, the collaboration on the reconstruction was often touted as a gesture of post-Cold War reconciliation and friendship. With renewed funding and support, work accelerated once more in the early 2000s. A firm deadline was set. The reconstructed Amber Room would be unveiled as part of the celebrations for St. Petersburg's 300th anniversary in 2003. Craftsmen raced to finish carving and mounting the last panels. They applied finished touches, polishing the amber to a lustrous sheen and installing new mirrors in gold leaf accents to match the original opulence. Finally, in June 2003, the magnificent new amber was completed and officially opened. In a ceremonious event, Russia's President Vladimir Putin and Germany's Chancellor Gerhard Schröder together dedicated the Amber Room on May 31st, 2003. The unveiling was both a restoration of cultural heritage and a poignant echo of the past. Nearly 300 years after a Prussian king had gifted the amber panels to Peter the Great, German and Russian dignitaries stood side by side to celebrate the room's rebirth. The occasion was marked as a symbol of peace and unity, reflecting the original spirit behind the Amber Room's exchange in 1716. The reconstructed Amber Room is today installed exactly where the original once stood, in the Catherine Palace at Tsarskoye Selo, or Pushkin, in the same hall that Elizabeth and Rastrelli prepared in 1750. The new room closely emulates the last known historical appearance of the Amber Room as of the late 18th century. The artisans took slight liberties only where documentation was lacking, or where modern conservation dictated a tweak. For instance, they improved the room's climate control to avoid the severe temperature swings of old. They also kept detailed records of the reconstruction process, so future generations will know exactly how it was made, a courtesy we wish the 18th century builders had done more thoroughly. Inside the completed Amber Room, one beholds a resplendent sight: floor-to-ceiling mosaics of golden amber, richly patterned and glowing. Mirrors between the panels reflect the amber's warm light infinitely. The mosaics of the five senses are again in place, thanks to skilled reproductions, with one original, the touch and smell panel found in 1997, now reintegrated among them. Gilded word cherubs and florid scrollwork enliven the scene just as before. Visitors often stand in hushed wonder, much as Catherine's courtiers did over 2 centuries ago. For many, it is hard to believe everything in the room is essentially brand new. Such is the mastery of the reconstruction that it captures the ambience of antiquity. The Amber Room is now a star attraction for tourists visiting the Catherine Palace. Its restoration cost over $11 million in total and took 25 years of careful labor. But the reward is that the world can once again experience this one-of-a-kind creation. Importantly, the reconstructed Amber Room not only serves as a marvel for public enjoyment, but also stands as a tribute to cultural resilience. It's a statement that after devastating loss, art and heritage can be revived through human dedication and international cooperation. Maintaining the Amber Room is an ongoing effort. The amber panels must be regularly checked and gently cleaned. The room's microclimate is controlled to prevent the problem of the past. The Tsarskoye Selo Amber Workshop continues to operate, both to keep the Amber Room in pristine condition and to work on other amber art craftsmen's restorations. The legacy of the craftsmen who rebuilt the Amber Room lives on, as they have helped train a new generation in the art of amber carving, thus reviving a craft that was nearly lost. conclusion with many facets. Of the Amber Room is a story with many facets. It is a tale of artistic genius, monarchical vanity, wartime greed, tragic loss, and determined resurrection. From the moment amber was formed in ancient forests to the moment it lit up an imperial chamber, to the dark night it disappeared amid war, and finally to its modern rebirth, the Amber Room's journey encapsulate the turbulent path of European history itself. Today, visitors strolling through the quiet, golden amber halls of Catherine Palace can once again stand in the Amber Room and feel its serene glow. The atmosphere is indeed meditative. One can imagine Empress Elizabeth closing her eyes in a private reverie here, or Catherine the Great proudly showing it off to astonished French diplomats. The room invites a kind of peaceful contemplation. The scent of amber. Yes, amber has a gentle, piney aroma when warm. And the soft sunlit hues created a calming aura. It is remarkable that something born of nature's accident, fossilized tree resin, could be transformed by human hands into a sublime work of art that still speaks to us across time. Yet, even as the reconstructed Amber Room delights thousands, the whereabouts of the original remain an enduring enigma. Perhaps those amber panels were reduced to ashes in 1945, their golden light extinguished in the flames of war. Or perhaps they still lie hidden in some forgotten bunker or sunken ship, waiting for the day when they might be rediscovered and tell their story. With each passing year, the likelihood diminishes, but the fascination persists. The Amber Room has secured a place in the pantheon of history's great lost treasures, alongside the likes of the Library of Alexandria or the crown jewels of ancient regimes, things we know existed in magnificence and which haunt us with their loss. The Amber Room's legend also serves as a stark reminder of the cultural destruction wrought by war. What was once a symbol of peace between Prussia and Russia, ironically became a casualty of a later conflict between Germany and Russia. Its loss was keenly felt by the Russian people, and its reconstruction was as much an act of healing and cultural pride as it was one of artistry. In that sense, the new Amber Room stands not only as a copy of a lost masterpiece, but as a symbol of restoration, of beauty reclaimed from the ravages of history. In the gentle silence of the Amber Room today, one might reflect on the many hands that have touched its story, the craftsmen who first built it, the royals who cherished it, the soldiers who seized it, the historians and hunters who sought it, and the artisans who brought it back to life. Their voices echo faintly in the stillness. The Amber Room, in all its permutations, has witnessed the rise and falls of empires, the clash of armies, and the passage of centuries. Now it radiates tranquility and splendor once more, inviting us to marvel and to remember. As you close your eyes, imagine the warm glow of amber around you. In this tranquil moment, the amber room lives again, not only in physical form at Tsarskoye Selo, but in our collective memory and imagination. Its history, painstakingly researched and retold here, becomes a kind of lullaby of art and time. A story of how something exquisitely fragile can endure through resilience and remembrance. And perhaps that is the ultimate legacy of the Amber Room. That beauty, even when lost, can inspire humanity to create again and keep alive the wonders of our world.